As part of a weekly review under the IYR talks, I am discussing major important international national events, and today we will review two major incidents or news that has happened in the last 1 week internationally and nationally. One is the Canada-based Khalistani terrorism and linking up of Indian intelligence agencies with the killing of Nizar. A known Khalistani terrorist harbored, nurtured and sheltered in Canada. Last week it looked as if it was an accusation made by Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, against India. But as days passed, it's now becoming very clear Trudeau is not alone in this. Maybe he's just a front to a warning which United States wanted to give to India. At that time it was suggested or leaked, because they are giving a number of deliberate leaks, that 5-eye surveillance system shared intelligence with Justin Trudeau, based on which he came to this conclusion that India is behind the killing of Nizar. What is this 5-eye surveillance? This consists of the Anglo-Saxon 5 countries which share intelligence among themselves. These are New Zealand, Australia, England, USA and Canada. But as days go by, now it is specifically being mentioned that the intelligence is shared by USA. Then the US-based media is highlighting this issue far greater than what it needs to be emphasized on. Like the Washington Post, the New York Times, Economist are carrying out any number of articles on this on a day-to-day basis, so that the issue does not die down, suggesting that India has done something gravely wrong. And in addition to Justin Trudeau, Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and a number of others have talked, stating that it's a major issue and India needs to cooperate. One thing that everybody is surprised in the West, as I could see, because this is something on which they are tweeting a lot, posting a lot and talking a lot from the West, is that there is no dissenting voice. India as one is today standing behind the government in what they have done, even if assuming that something has been done. And the reason for it is a pent-up anger and feeling that Canada has become a real a shelter and a heaven for the extremists and for their activities. It's one thing to give shelter, to give asylum to activists who propagate the cause, whatever they think is right. If they go to some other country and say that in the country of their origin they are being persecuted, that's entirely one thing. But to allow them to direct, supervise and effectively carry out terrorist activities in another country is a different thing. Then allowing them to raise funds for these terror activities is much worse. Canada is exactly doing that with reference to these Khalistani extremists. They are getting a free hand to operate their terrorist activities from Canada and also get sufficient funds to do the same thing. When this intelligence is shared with Canada, Canada is refusing to act on them. So, in fact, as somebody has pointed, if there is a country which fits in the bill to be a country to be monitored by FATF, an organization which is set up to monitor the activities of terror funding and terror sheltering nations, Canada fits the bill perfectly. But we have Pakistan on the grey list of this FATF, but not Canada. And Pakistan really suffered because of that, because there were a lot of sanctions. But Canada is going scot-free. This is another case of hypocrisy and double standards that the West maintains. Of course, the whole history of America is one of targeted killing of people, extra jurisdictional killings, starting from L&D to anyone. I mean, that's the way they have been operated right up to Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. But then, when you question them back, they don't answer. They will only stick to this point that this is a violation of sovereignty of Canada. But now that it is known that it's not exactly Canada which is taking this stand, but it is USA which is behind this, it's time India is careful. Why is USA doing it? It's a partner within India as part of the Quad to contain China, and has been working closely with India on a number of other issues. But this one, they have raked it up strategically with a purpose. The thing is, they are not very happy about the independent views that India is taking on a number of other issues, starting from Ukraine war, buying of oil from Russia, or any other thing where India is following an independent path of its own. But is it worth picking up a fight with USA at this juncture? Definitely not. So now that we know that America is behind it, not so much Canada, it's time we compromise somewhere and put a full stop to this whole thing, because strategically America is very, very important to us. Whatever people may say, America is still at a commanding heights internationally. China has really played their game very well. They just did not pick up a quarrel with America till they were strong, allowed their economy to grow, utilized the Western markets to build up a massive economy, and only when they became very strong, they started taking a independent stand of their own. We are not at that stage. We are not at a stage where China is. So it's time for us to put a stop to this and somewhere compromise and settle the issues and go forward with American strategic partnership, at least for the time being, and look forward to a different day to take up a different stand. But at the same time, now that the issue has come to the fore, we can definitely put pressure on Canada about terrorist funding, terrorist activities, containing them, and get them on board in containing the Khalistani terrorism in India, which is being monitored, financed, operated from Canada. I think this should be the right approach for us while addressing this particular issue internationally. Then nationally, one thing that is making a lot of news nowadays is the simultaneous elections, which we call as Jubilee elections, where the state and the center go to polls at the same time. In fact, that's the way the election process in India has started in 1951 and continued to 56 and 62. After 62, slowly, as far as the states are concerned, a lot of instability came. Till 62, almost all for a decade, it was Congress rule everywhere. There was a lot of stability. 5 years, the chief ministers were not changed, or even in case they were changed within the same party, somebody else has taken over. But there was no dissolution of the assembly or the parliament. So things went on well. But after 62, in a number of states, coalition governments came, and after 67 they became more. Actually, after 67 it became a much bigger issue. These coalition governments were unstable, could not continue the full 5-year term, so midterm elections came. So that particular syncrotic elections that were there earlier got a break. So we are having different elections to states at a different time and to the Lok Sabha at a different time. A much bigger issue has come somewhere in 70 when Mrs. Gandhi suddenly dissolved the parliament and went for midterm elections. So the parliamentary elections totally got cut off from the state elections. And in the process, what we now have is each year we have a major election going on somewhere or the other. And this is not good for the country. And it's always better to have simultaneous elections in the larger interests of the country for two reasons. I would put these two reasons as the most important one to go in for simultaneous elections. Some people keep saying about cost. Cost I don't think is a major issue. I mean, if cost is the only issue, you can forget and go ahead with these elections as they are scheduled and have an election each year, because after all, in terms of an economy of India's size, the cost of conducting elections hardly matter. But there are two other important reasons why we need to have simultaneous elections. Point is, a 5-year full political stability for political leadership to implement their policies on a long-term basis, keeping the long-term interests of the nation at heart, is very, very essential. What happens when you have elections each year? You can't take a long-term view of issues. You are forced to take populist view of the programs and issues. That may be temporarily give some benefit to people, but in the long run, that negatively impacts the growth and stability of the Indian economy. If you don't want this to happen, if you want the political leadership to take a long-term view of the state finances or the central finances and plan for projects, then simultaneous elections are essential. Then the second most important point is the quality time of the chief executive. The Prime Minister is the chief executive of the country. Chief Minister is the chief executive of the state. They are very, very busy. Their time matters, and they need to give quality time for planning, implementing programs for the good of the state, for the good of the country. But when you have elections every year, substantial portion of the time of the Prime Minister is taken away in electioneering. After all, he is a party man and his party has to win. And if the party has to win, he has to go for campaigning, and that is going to be strenuous, and that will put lot of decisions on the back burner because he is not available for taking the decisions in the interest of the country. If that quality time of the chief executive should be available for taking decisions for the progress of the country, for the betterment of the economy, you need to have simultaneous elections so that he is free for the 5 years after being elected to plan and do the work that is required to be done, rather than keep going around electioneering across the state. So on these two counts, I consider simultaneous elections is a very, very important thing as far as India is concerned. Let's hope Ramnath Kovind panel will give some useful recommendations. If this can be done without a constitutional amendment, nothing like that. If it requires a constitutional amendment also, it needs to be done. But given the political atmosphere today, that constitutional amendment may not be possible now. But as and when that type of a majority is available, this is one of the first items on which the government will have to take a view and work on that. Thank you very much.